I never thought I'd find love again, especially not when I was wearing my dead grandmother's sweater and pants that hadn't fit since college. But sometimes, life has other plans. Emma's voice cracked as she looked directly into the camera, tears glistening in her eyes. If you want to know how a disastrous blind date turned into the most beautiful love story I've ever known, keep watching. And if this story touches your heart, please like this video and subscribe to hear more real stories that prove love finds us in the most unexpected moments. Emma Walsh stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of Café Blue, barely recognizing herself. The mustard yellow cardigan that had once belonged to her grandmother hung loosely from her shoulders, paired with high-waisted jeans that pinched uncomfortably at her waist. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, not the artfully tousled kind that took an hour to perfect, but the kind that screamed, "I gave up 3 days ago." She'd even applied her makeup poorly on purpose, with unblended foundation and slightly smudged mascara. This was exactly the look she was going for. Unattractive. Unapproachable. Unmemorable. Perfect, she muttered, adjusting her glasses that she normally only wore for reading. Tonight, they completed her carefully crafted disaster of an appearance. At 32, Emma was tired. Tired of blind dates set up by well-meaning friends. Tired of getting her hopes up only to be disappointed. Tired of putting her best foot forward only to be ghosted or, worse, to endure months of dating someone before discovering they were nothing like the person they'd initially presented themselves to be. So when her roommate Lily had insisted on setting her up with the perfect guy, Emma had agreed with one condition: she would go, but she wouldn't try. In fact, she would do the opposite. She would dress so unappealingly that if this man showed any interest at all, it would have to be genuine. "He'll take one look at me and run," Emma had told Lily confidently. "And then you'll finally stop trying to fix my love life." Lily had rolled her eyes. "You're being ridiculous. James is different. He's kind and genuine and..." "A single dad, I know," Emma had interrupted. "You've mentioned that about 50 times." The single dad part was the only reason Emma had agreed to the date at all. In her experience, single parents tended to be more grounded, more authentic. They didn't have time for games. But still, she wasn't taking any chances. Taking a deep breath, Emma exited the bathroom and scanned the cafe for her date. Lily had shown her a photo, so she knew she was looking for a tall man with dark hair and... Her eyes landed on him immediately. James Parker sat at a corner table, his attention focused on the book in his hands. Even from across the room, Emma could see he was handsome in an understated way, with strong features softened by kind eyes. He wore a simple blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with what looked like a few small scars. For a brief moment, Emma considered turning around and leaving. This had seemed like a funny idea at home, but now, standing in a public place looking like she'd raided a thrift store blindfolded, she felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. But then James looked up, his eyes meeting hers across the cafe. Instead of the expected confusion or disappointment, his face broke into a warm smile that reached all the way to his eyes. He stood up, waving her over. Too late to run now. Emma made her way to the table, acutely aware of every eye that turned to look at her mismatched outfit. "Emma?" James asked as she approached, his voice deep and pleasant. "That's me," she replied, trying to sound as unenthusiastic as possible. "You must be James." "It's great to meet you," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "I've been looking forward to this all week." Emma sat down, surprised by his genuine tone. She'd expected polite disappointment at best. "Really?" she couldn't help asking. "Absolutely. Lily talks about you all the time. Says you're the best kindergarten teacher she's ever worked with and that you have a way of making everyone feel special." His smile widened. "My daughter Sophie could use someone like that in her life right now." Emma felt a twinge of guilt. Here was a man talking about his daughter within the first minute of meeting her, while she was playing a childish game. "How old is Sophie?" she asked, deciding to engage in real conversation despite her ridiculous appearance. She's 6, James replied, his expression softening at the mention of his daughter. Going on 16, if you ask her. She's had a tough time since her mom left 2 years ago, but she's the strongest person I know. The genuine love in his voice when he spoke about his daughter caught Emma off guard. This wasn't the typical first date small talk she was used to. That must be difficult, she said sincerely. For both of you. James nodded, a shadow crossing his face. It has been. But we're figuring it out day by day. He paused, then added with a small laugh, sorry, I don't usually dump my life story on someone within the first 5 minutes of meeting them. No, it's refreshing, Emma admitted. Most first dates are just people trying to impress each other with carefully edited versions of themselves. James's eyes met hers, and something in his gaze made her feel like he could see right through her deliberately unattractive exterior. Is that why you're dressed like that? He asked gently. To avoid the whole impression management thing? Emma felt her cheeks flush with heat. You noticed? That you're wearing a sweater 3 sizes too big in the middle of June? Yeah, I noticed. His tone wasn't mocking but curious. I'm just wondering why. For a moment, Emma considered making up an excuse. But something about James's direct yet kind approach made her want to be honest. I'm tired of dating, she admitted. Tired of putting effort into looking perfect and saying the right things, only to discover weeks or months later that the person I thought I was getting to know was just putting on a show too. She gestured to her outfit. So I figured if you were still interested despite all this, then maybe you might be genuine. She expected him to be offended or at least put off by her admission. Instead, James threw his head back and laughed, a deep, genuine sound that drew the attention of nearby patrons. That, he said when his laughter subsided, is the most honest thing I've heard on a first date in years. He leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with amusement. And for what it's worth, you have beautiful eyes. The kind that smile before your mouth does. No amount of bad fashion can hide that. Emma felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crumble. You're not what I expected, she said quietly. Neither are you, he replied. And I mean that as a compliment. As they ordered coffee and began to talk in earnest, Emma found herself forgetting about her ridiculous outfit. James was easy to talk to, asking thoughtful questions and listening to her answers with genuine interest. He told her about his work as an architect, his love of old jazz records, and most of all, about Sophie, her love of insects, her struggle with math, her recent obsession with learning to play chess. She sounds wonderful, Emma said, realizing they'd been talking for over an hour. She is, James agreed. She's also the reason I haven't dated much since her mother left. It's hard to find someone who understands that Sophie will always come first. That's how it should be, Emma said without hesitation. Children need to know they're the priority. James studied her face for a moment. You really mean that? Of course. I became a kindergarten teacher because I believe children deserve adults who put them first. She smiled, thinking of her classroom. Every child deserves to feel important and loved. Something in James's expression changed, a softening around his eyes that made Emma's heart beat a little faster. Would you like to go for a walk? He asked suddenly. There's a park nearby. It's a beautiful evening. Emma hesitated, glancing down at her outfit. Like this? Exactly like that, James said, standing and offering his hand. I'd like to keep getting to know the real Emma, not the one who usually shows up for first dates. Against her better judgment, Emma took his hand and let him lead her out of the cafe and into the warm summer evening. As they walked toward the park, she was acutely aware of the stares her outfit attracted, but James seemed completely unbothered, keeping up a steady stream of conversation as if she were dressed in her finest. The park was alive with the sounds of children playing, dogs barking, and the distant melody of a street musician playing guitar. They found a bench near a small pond where ducks swam lazily in the golden evening light. "Can I ask you something personal?" James said as they sat down. Emma nodded, surprised to find she felt comfortable with the idea. "What happened to make you so disillusioned with dating? You're smart, kind, clearly great with kids. I find it hard to believe men aren't lining up to get to know you." Emma sighed, watching a mother duck lead her ducklings across the pond. "My last serious relationship ended a year ago. We were together for 3 years, talking about marriage, kids, the whole future. Then I discovered he'd been cheating on me with his coworker for most of that time." She shrugged, trying to make light of the pain that still lingered. "After that, I went on a series of increasingly terrible dates with men who either couldn't stop talking about themselves or were clearly just looking for something casual." "I'm sorry," James said quietly. "That's rough. What about you?" Emma asked, turning to face him. "Besides being a single dad, what's your dating horror story?" James was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the horizon where the sun was beginning to set. "My wife, ex-wife, left us when Sophie was 4. Just decided one day that being a mother wasn't what she wanted after all." His voice held no bitterness, only a deep sadness. "She lives in California now. Calls Sophie on birthdays and Christmas, but that's about it." "That's terrible," Emma said, instinctively reaching for his hand. "For both of you, but especially for Sophie." James looked down at their joined hands, a small smile playing at his lips. "It was hard at first. Really hard. But in some ways, it's better than living with someone who didn't want to be there. Sophie deserves better than that." "So do you," Emma said softly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. There was something happening between them, something Emma hadn't felt in a very long time, a connection that went beyond physical attraction or shared interests. It was as if they recognized something in each other, some matching piece that had been missing. The moment was broken by the ringing of James's phone. He glanced at the screen and gave Emma an apologetic look. "It's my sister, she's watching Sophie tonight," he explained, answering the call. "Hey, Kate, everything okay?" Emma watched as his expression changed from concern to amusement. "She did what?" he laughed. "Put her on." His voice softened as he spoke to his daughter. "Hey, sophomore Aunt Kate says you're refusing to go to bed until you talk to me." He listened for a moment, then said, "I know, I promised to check for monsters, but Aunt Kate can do that too." Another pause. "Yes, she knows the special monster checking song." Emma couldn't help smiling as she watched James with his phone, his entire demeanor changing as he spoke to his daughter. This was a man who loved deeply and without reservation. "I'll tell you what," he was saying. "If you go to bed now like a good girl, I'll make chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast." He grinned at whatever response came through the phone. "That's my girl. I love you too, sophomore, sweet dreams." He hung up and turned back to Emma with a sheepish smile. "Sorry about that. Bedtime can be a negotiation process that rivals international peace talks." "Don't apologize," Emma said. "It's sweet. She obviously adores you." "The feeling is mutual," James replied. "Though she does have me wrapped around her little finger." As the sky darkened and stars began to appear, they continued talking, sharing stories from their childhoods, their hopes for the future, their favorite books and movies. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in months, forgetting entirely about her ridiculous outfit and the game she'd been playing. When the park lights came on, signaling the late hour, James walked her back to her car. They stood beside it, neither quite ready for the evening to end. "I had a really good time tonight," James said, his voice soft in the quiet parking lot. "Much better than I expected." "Even with all this?" Emma gestured to her outfit with a self-deprecating smile. "Especially with all that," he replied, his eyes warm. "It told me something important about you right from the start." "What's that?" That you value authenticity over appearances. That's rare, Emma. And incredibly attractive. The sincerity in his voice made her breath catch. I had a good time too, she admitted. I wasn't expecting to. James took a step closer. I'd like to see you again. Maybe introduce you to Sophie, if that's not moving too fast. The mention of his daughter made Emma realize how serious he was. Men didn't introduce their children to women they were only casually interested in. I'd like that, she said, surprised by how much she meant it. How about Sunday? We usually go to the Children's Museum, then get ice cream. Very low pressure, I promise. Emma nodded, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. Sunday sounds perfect. James smiled, then hesitated for a moment before leaning in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. But Emma found herself moving toward him, meeting him halfway. The kiss was gentle and brief, but it sent a current of electricity through her body that left her slightly breathless. Good night, Emma, James said as he pulled away. Thank you for the worst rest, best first date I've ever had. Emma laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. Good night, James. As she drove home, she couldn't stop smiling, even as she acknowledged the irony of the situation. She had dressed to repel, to ensure no connection would form. Instead, she had found someone who saw past the exterior to the person beneath, someone who valued honesty over perfection. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Sunday arrived with clear skies and Emma's stomach in knots. She stood in front of her closet, paralyzed by indecision. What did one wear to meet a 6-year-old who might one day become an important part of her life? After trying on and discarding half a dozen outfits, she settled on a simple sundress with a cardigan and comfortable sandals, practical for a museum but still put together. This time, she wanted to present her real self, not a deliberately off-putting version. James had texted that they would pick her up at 11, and at precisely 11 o'clock, a knock sounded at her apartment door. Taking a deep breath, Emma opened it to find James standing there with a small girl partially hidden behind his legs. Good morning, James said with a warm smile that made Emma's heart flutter. Emma, I'd like you to meet Sophie. Sophie, this is Miss Emma, the teacher I told you about. Sophie peered around her father's legs, her dark eyes, so like her father's, regarding Emma with cautious curiosity. She had her father's coloring but softer features, with a spray of freckles across her nose and 2 neat braids framing her face. Emma crouched down to Sophie's level. Hi, Sophie. It's very nice to meet you. Your dad has told me a lot about you. He told me you're a kindergarten teacher, Sophie said, her voice small but clear. That's right. I teach at Oak Ridge Elementary. Sophie's eyes widened slightly. My friend Zoe goes there. She says the kindergarten teachers let them play with real frogs. Emma laughed. We do have a classroom pet frog named Frederick. He's very friendly. Sophie took a small step forward, emerging from behind her father. I like frogs. And butterflies. And spiders, but Daddy doesn't like when I bring those inside. With good reason, James interjected with a mock shudder. The bathroom incident of 2025 is still giving me nightmares. Emma raised an eyebrow. The bathroom incident? I found a really big spider and put it in a jar in the bathroom to watch it, Sophie explained matter-of-factly. But I forgot to put the lid on tight and it got out while Daddy was in the shower. I've never moved so fast in my life, James added, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Nearly broke my neck getting out of that shower. Emma couldn't help laughing at the mental image. I can imagine. Though two can't help laughing at the mental image. I can imagine. Though I have to say, Sophie, I'm impressed by your interest in spiders. Most people are afraid of them. Sophie beamed, clearly pleased by the validation. Daddy says it's good to be interested in things other people think are scary. It makes you brave. Emma glanced up at James, touched by this insight into his parenting. Your daddy is very wise. Sometimes, Sophie conceded with the brutal honesty of a 6-year-old. But he can't braid hair good and he burns pancakes. James laughed, ruffling his daughter's hair. Thanks for the character reference, kiddo. He looked at Emma. Ready to go? The Children's Museum was bustling with Sunday visitors, but Sophie navigated the crowds with the confidence of a regular, pulling Emma by the hand toward her favorite exhibits. Emma found herself charmed by the little girl's enthusiasm and knowledge, the way she explained each display as if Emma had never seen anything like it before. This is where the water goes round and round, Sophie explained at the water table, demonstrating how to use the hand pump. It's called a water cycle? Emma suggested. Sophie nodded vigorously. Yeah. Like rain and clouds and stuff. James hung back slightly, watching the two of them interact with a soft expression that made Emma's cheeks warm whenever she caught him looking. There was something intimate about being included in their Sunday ritual, something that felt significant in ways she wasn't ready to fully examine. By the time they reached the butterfly garden, Sophie's favorite part, the little girl had completely warmed up to Emma, chattering away about school, her friends, and the chapter book her father was reading to her at bedtime. Look! Sophie gasped as a large blue morpho butterfly landed on a flower near her hand. It's so pretty. It is, Emma agreed, crouching beside her. Did you know that the blue color isn't actually in their wings? It's created by the way light bounces off tiny scales. Sophie's eyes widened. Really? How do you know that? I studied biology in college before I became a teacher, Emma explained. I've always loved learning about animals and nature. Me too. Sophie exclaimed. Daddy, did you hear that? Miss Emma likes animals like me. James, who had been watching them from a nearby bench, smiled. I heard. You two have a lot in common. As they moved through the museum, Emma found herself increasingly aware of James's presence, the way he gently guided Sophie with a hand on her shoulder, the patient way he answered her endless questions, the quiet strength in his tall frame. Several times, their eyes met over Sophie's head, and each time, Emma felt that same connection she'd experienced in the park, a sense of recognition that went beyond the physical. After the museum, they walked to an ice cream parlor a few blocks away, Sophie skipping ahead while Emma and James followed at a more sedate pace. She likes you, James said quietly. I can tell. I like her too, Emma replied honestly. She's amazing, James. So curious and bright. She hasn't been this comfortable with someone new in a long time, he continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Not since her mom left. Emma felt the weight of this statement, understanding what James wasn't saying explicitly, that he was letting her into their lives in a significant way, and that came with responsibility. I understand, she said softly. And I wouldn't do anything to hurt her. James nodded, seeming satisfied with her response. As they reached the ice cream shop, he held the door open for her, his hand briefly touching the small of her back in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. Inside, Sophie deliberated over flavors with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice before settling on mint chocolate chip. Emma chose strawberry, and James opted for coffee. They sat at a small table by the window, Sophie regaling them with stories about her first-grade class while ice cream melted down the sides of her cone. Miss Emma, Sophie said suddenly, fixing her with a direct gaze, do you have any kids? Emma shook her head. No, I don't. But you like kids, right? Since you're a teacher? I love kids, Emma confirmed. Teaching them is my favorite thing in the world. Sophie nodded, apparently satisfied. That's good. Because Daddy needs someone who likes kids if he's going to date them. James nearly choked on his ice cream. Sophie, he said, his voice strained, remember our talk about private conversations? But it's true, Sophie insisted. You told Uncle Mike that you needed to find someone who understood that we're a package deal. She turned back to Emma. That means me and Daddy come together, like a happy meal. Emma bit her lip to keep from laughing at James's mortified expression. That makes perfect sense to me, she told Sophie seriously. The best things often come in packages. James's eyes met hers over Sophie's head, gratitude and something warmer mingling in his gaze. The rest of the afternoon passed in a pleasant blur, and before Emma knew it, they were back at her apartment door. Sophie, tired from the day's adventures, leaned against her father's side, her earlier energy depleted. I should get this one home for dinner, James said, his hand gently stroking his daughter's hair. But I had a really great time today. Me too, Emma replied, surprised by how much she meant it. Thank you both for including me. Can Miss Emma come over for dinner sometime? Sophie asked, perking up slightly. She could see my butterfly collection. James glanced at Emma, eyebrows raised in question. That's up to Miss Emma, but I think it's a great idea. I'd love to, Emma said, touched by the invitation. Maybe next weekend? Sophie nodded enthusiastically, then surprised Emma by stepping forward and wrapping her arms around Emma's waist in a quick hug. Bye, Miss Emma. Thanks for coming to the museum with us. Thank you for showing me around, Emma replied, her heart melting at the unexpected gesture. After Sophie stepped back, James leaned in and placed a soft kiss on Emma's cheek. I'll call you, he promised quietly. As Emma watched them walk down the hallway, Sophie's small hand in her father's larger one, she felt something shift inside her, a space opening up that she hadn't realized had been closed. The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality for Emma. James called that evening as promised, and they talked for hours after Sophie went to bed. He texted her throughout the week, small updates about his day, funny things Sophie had said, questions about her classes. By the time Friday arrived, Emma felt as if they'd known each other for months rather than days. Dinner at James and Sophie's house that weekend became a regular occurrence, followed by movie nights where the three of them would pile onto the couch with popcorn and blankets. Sophie would inevitably fall asleep halfway through, leaving James and Emma to talk in hushed voices, their hands finding each other in the dim light of the television. As summer turned to fall, Emma found herself spending more and more time at their house. She helped Sophie with her homework, learned to braid hair properly, much to Sophie's delight, and discovered that James was actually an excellent cook when he wasn't burning pancakes. They fell into a comfortable routine that felt both novel and strangely familiar, as if they'd been waiting to find this particular configuration of happiness. It wasn't always perfect. Sophie had occasional meltdowns when memories of her mother surfaced, lashing out at both James and Emma in her confusion and pain. James sometimes withdrew into himself, worried about moving too fast or making mistakes that would hurt his daughter. And Emma had moments of doubt, wondering if she was ready for the instant family that came with loving James. But through it all, they talked, honestly and openly, just as they had on that first date when Emma had shown up in her grandmother's sweater and too tight jeans. On a crisp October evening, 6 months after they'd met, James invited Emma for a special dinner, just the two of them. Sophie was spending the night with her Aunt Kate, and James had prepared Emma's favorite meal, roasted salmon with lemon and herbs. This is lovely, Emma said as they sat at the dining table, candles flickering between them. What's the occasion? James looked uncharacteristically nervous, fidgeting with his napkin. Do I need an occasion to make dinner for the woman I love? Emma's heart skipped at the casual way he said those words, the woman I love. They had exchanged I love yous a month earlier, but each time still felt new and precious. No, she replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. But you're acting strange. Is everything okay? James took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About the future. Emma felt a flutter of anxiety. That sounds serious. It is. He squeezed her hand. Emma, these past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought so much joy to me and Sophie. You've made us feel whole again in a way I didn't think was possible." Tears pricked at Emma's eyes. "You've done the same for me." James stood up suddenly, coming around to her side of the table and, to her shock, dropping to one knee beside her chair. "I know this might seem fast," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But when you know, you know. And I knew from that first night in the cafe, when you walked in wearing that ridiculous sweater and those too tight jeans, trying so hard to be unattractive and failing completely because all I could see was how beautiful you are inside." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Emma Walsh, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Sophie's mother and make our family complete?" Emma's hands flew to her mouth, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. For a moment, she couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the depth of her feelings. "Yes," she finally managed, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, I will marry you." James's face broke into a radiant smile as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. His hands trembled slightly as he slipped it onto her finger, then rose to pull her into his arms. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "So much." "I love you too," she replied, clinging to him. "Both of you." Later that night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of James's bedroom, soon to be their bedroom, Emma found herself thinking about the strange path that had led her here. How a deliberate attempt to sabotage a blind date had instead led her to the love of her life. "What are you thinking about?" James murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "About our first date," she replied. "About how I tried so hard to make sure nothing would come of it." James chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest beneath her ear. "The universe has a sense of humor." "It does," Emma agreed. "Though I still can't believe you were attracted to me in that outfit." "It wasn't the outfit I was attracted to," James said, his voice growing serious. "It was the woman brave enough to wear it. The woman who valued honesty over appearances. The woman who looked at my daughter with genuine interest and kindness." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "That's the woman I fell in love with." Emma smiled in the darkness, her heart full to bursting. "I'm glad I dressed ugly for our blind date." "Me too," James replied. "Though I hope you're planning something a bit different for our wedding." Emma laughed, snuggling closer to him. "Don't worry. I think I'll leave Grandma's sweater in the closet for that particular occasion." The next morning, they picked up Sophie together to share their news. The little girl's squeal of delight when they told her was possibly the sweetest sound Emma had ever heard. "Does this mean you'll be my mom now?" Sophie asked, her eyes wide with hope. Emma knelt down to Sophie's level, taking the child's small hands in hers. "If that's what you'd like, then yes. I would be honored to be your mom." Sophie threw her arms around Emma's neck. "I've been wishing for a mom like you," she whispered. "One who likes butterflies and frogs and doesn't mind when I talk a lot." Emma held her close, tears threatening again. "And I've been wishing for a daughter like you," she whispered back. "One who's brave and smart and has the most beautiful heart." Over Sophie's head, her eyes met James's, and the love she saw there took her breath away. This was her family now, this kind, patient man and his wonderful daughter. A family born from the most unlikely of beginnings, a blind date she tried her best to ruin. 3 months later, Emma walked down the aisle in a simple white dress that made her feel beautiful inside and out. James waited for her at the altar, his eyes never leaving hers as she approached. Beside him stood Sophie, beaming in her flower girl dress, practically bouncing with excitement. As Emma reached them, Sophie couldn't contain herself any longer. "We're going to be a real family now," she announced loudly enough for the entire congregation to hear. Laughter rippled through the guests, but Emma only had eyes for the two people standing before her, the single dad who had seen past her defenses and the little girl who had claimed a piece of her heart from their very first meeting. "We already are," Emma replied, taking both their hands in hers. "We already are." And as she spoke her vows to James, promising to love and cherish him for all their days, Emma silently made another vow, to Sophie, to James, and to herself, to always be authentic, to value what truly mattered, and to never forget that sometimes, love finds us when we least expect it, even when we're wearing our grandmother's ugly sweater. And that, Emma said, looking directly into the camera as she finished her story, is how I found my happily ever after with the man who fell for me at first sight, not despite my appearance, but because he saw the real me underneath it all. She smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. If you're still looking for love, remember that the right person will see you, the real you, no matter what you're wearing. And that's worth waiting for. She reached out to take James's hand as he moved into the frame beside her, Sophie wiggling in between them with a gap-toothed smile. If our story touched your heart, James added, please like this video and subscribe to hear more real stories about finding love in unexpected places. Because sometimes, the most beautiful love stories begin with the courage to be exactly who you are. Even if who you are is someone wearing your grandma's ugly sweater, Sophie chimed in with perfect comedic timing. As the three of them laughed together, the camera slowly faded to black, leaving viewers with the image of a family built on authenticity, acceptance, and a love that saw beyond appearances to the beauty that truly mattered.